Emily Parker slipped through the side door of Oak Ridge Preparatory High School every morning before the sun had fully risen. She liked the quiet before the hallways, filled with laughter and gossip, the empty corridors where she could disappear behind her father's oversized janitor's jacket. While the other girls clutched designer backpacks and gossip magazines, Emily clutched a battered violin case her father found at a thrift store years ago. Her dad, Mr. Parker, was the night janitor. Everyone knew it. The kids reminded her of it every chance they got. Some days it stung. Some days it built a fire inside her that she didn't show. In music class, she sat at the back, her hair tucked behind her ear, pencil tapping silently on her sheet music, while the other girls giggled and talked about dances and new phones. Miss Reynolds, the music teacher, would glance at Emily occasionally, wondering why the quiet girl always stayed behind after class to ask if she could practice alone. When Miss Reynolds announced the annual talent showcase, Emily's pulse quickened. Before she could talk herself out of it, she scribbled her name on the sign-up sheet that hung crooked on the music room door. The next morning, the rumors started. Claire Hastings, the principal's daughter and the star of the violin club, spotted Emily's name first. She read it aloud in the hallway, her voice dripping with mockery. "Emily Parker, you're kidding me. And the janitor's daughter thinks she can play violin on stage?" Her friends erupted in shrill laughter. Emily pretended not to hear. She kept walking, her violin case pressed tight to her side, her heart pounding so loud she was sure they could hear it too. That night, after dinner in their tiny apartment above the school's maintenance shed, Emily sat cross-legged on the floor of the storage closet her father used for mops and spare light bulbs. She opened her violin case, pulled out the old instrument with scratches along its neck and worn varnish. She rested her chin on the shoulder rest, drew her bow across the strings, and closed her eyes. The notes weren't perfect. Sometimes her fingers slipped, sometimes her bow stuttered, but she played anyway, long after her father came in with his thermos and tired smile. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her fingers move with care and courage. "You sure you want to do this, Em?" he asked softly, his voice low like a secret. She nodded without looking up. "They'll laugh," he said, not unkindly, just honest. She lifted her bow again. "They're already laughing," she said quietly. "But they won't be laughing when I'm done." Each night that week, Emily practiced on the empty stage of the school auditorium. Her father waited in the shadows, sweeping rows and rows of seats, while her music drifted to the far corners of the room. The custodian's keys clinked in his pocket with every step, a reminder that this was his world, but maybe not hers forever. On Friday morning, Emily found a note in her locker written in pink gel pen. "Don't embarrass yourself tonight. Claire's quartet will blow you off the stage." She folded it neatly, tucked it inside her violin case, and closed the latch. When she stepped onto the bus that afternoon, kids whispered behind their backpacks. But Emily just looked out the window, the winter sun dipping behind the bare trees, her mind already on the spotlight and the hush before her first note. The auditorium was packed long before the show began. Parents and teachers filled the rows, talking excitedly while students checked their phones and shared whispered jokes. Backstage, Emily sat on a folding chair, her violin resting across her knees, her fingers tracing the scratches on its wooden surface like old scars she knew by heart. Claire Hastings walked by, her fancy satin dress swishing against the floor. She didn't say anything this time, just gave Emily a look that said everything. Pity, amusement, disbelief that the janitor's kid was really going to stand on the same stage as her. Emily could hear Claire's friends giggling behind the curtain. She closed her eyes, shutting them out the way she'd taught herself to shut out the squeaks of her dad's mop bucket or the whispers in the lunchroom. She pictured the storage closet where she'd first learned to play, her dad's heavy boots tapping in rhythm as she practiced the same scales over and over until her fingers burned. She thought about the nights on this same stage when no one watched, when she had the whole room to herself and the music belonged to her alone. When Claire and her quartet were called, the crowd erupted into polite applause. Claire beamed under the bright lights, soaking in every second. Their piece was flawless, practiced, elegant, each note shimmering like glass. When they finished, the audience clapped so hard the curtains behind Emily seemed to shiver. Claire shot her a satisfied smile as she stepped off the stage, violin still gleaming under her arm. Then the announcer's voice echoed through the mic, calling Emily's name. She felt her knees shake as she stood. The bright stage lights felt hotter than she remembered. She walked slowly to the center, the hall falling quiet, except for the squeak of her old sneakers on the polished wood floor. Some students in the back row laughed softly, then fell silent when she turned to face them. She lifted her violin to her shoulder, feeling the familiar weight settle her racing heart. She didn't look at Claire or the principal or the rows of parents who thought she was about to embarrass herself. She looked at the back of the hall, where her dad stood behind the last row, still wearing his uniform shirt with a fresh stain of floor polish on the pocket. He nodded once, just a small gesture, but it filled her like sunlight through a cracked window. She drew the bow across the strings. The first note rang out rich and warm, surprising even her. She closed her eyes. The auditorium disappeared. Her world shrank to her fingertips, and the sound that poured from them, clear, strong, alive. The giggles died somewhere in the darkness. Teachers leaned forward. Claire's smile vanished as the melody rose higher, weaving through the hush like a promise she'd made to herself 1,000 nights in that storage closet. The final note trembled in the air, a silver thread that held the room in place for one last heartbeat. Then silence, so complete she could hear her own breath, the squeak of her shoes as she stepped back. The applause started soft, then swelled into something that drowned out every whisper she'd ever heard about who she was and who she would never be. Her father clapped the loudest, eyes shining, his mop bucket abandoned in the shadows. As she bowed, the principal stood up, clapping along with everyone else. Even Claire's hands moved stiffly as she stared at Emily with a look that mixed disbelief and something like respect. Emily stepped off the stage, violin still warm in her hand. She didn't need to say anything. The music had said enough. In that moment, she wasn't just the janitor's daughter. She was the girl who had played her truth so loud, even the ones who laughed had no choice but to listen.